Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming and taking time out of your busy schedules. I'm hoping to give you a lot of information tonight. It may seem overwhelming. This is typically a brand new experience for all of you. So just to start out, how many of you have seniors? Most of you juniors, sophomore, or freshmen? Okay, so mostly junior, seniors. Just for the junior parents, I will be here again next year. Some things change slightly from year to year, so it is important to maybe come back next year, listen to it all again. The more you hear it, the easier it will become. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, college costs. How many of the seniors in here have already applied and been accepted to a school? How many of you know what the costs are to that school? Okay. It's amazing how many parents that I will meet with that are going through this process for the first time and don't even know what the school costs. So first of all, we're going to go through some of the costs associated with schools. The first one is a trade school. We all know what trade schools are: Penn Commercial, ITT, Technical Institute. Those are trade schools. It's very hard to find specific cost information on the websites on trade schools because most of them are for-profit and they do not want to publicize that. So you typically have to go speak with somebody or apply, get accepted, and then you'll get their cost information. But on average, the average program is about $33,000, and those programs can vary between 18 months, maybe sometimes up to 3 years. A community college, Washington County doesn't have a community college, but we do have CCAC right in the Washington Crown Center. This is from the CCAC website. So for Allegheny County residents, $104.75 per credit, or the full-time flat rate of $15.71, and that is per semester. Community colleges do not have room and board costs, so you're just paying for the actual tuition costs. State universities, they offer associate's programs, bachelor's programs. They also do offer master's, PhD programs, but for our purposes, we're going to talk about associate's and bachelor degree programs and some certificate programs. These programs, you typically pay a flat rate tuition based on your courses. And this information is from California University of Pennsylvania's website. So you see what their costs per semester are with tuition, which seems very reasonable, until you start to look at room and board costs. It is more expensive to live on campus at a state university than it is to pay for tuition. Private colleges. Private colleges will run the gamut when it comes to a cost for their education. Predominantly four-year bachelor degree programs. Some of them will also have the master's programs. And of course, costs vary by institution. We're going to start with Waynesburg. This is their tuition fees, room and board. So just a little under $30,000, and this information is for the 14-15 academic year. Here's Duquesne. So roughly 43, a little more expensive than Waynesburg. Here's W&J, we're about 52. And then Carnegie Mellon, who's over 60. So how many people have I just scared?
Yeah. You're not staying.
It's very
You're driving in.
It's very scary to see those numbers in black and white. But know that my main goal for being here tonight is to show you how to reduce these costs. And I was just telling Mr. Wilson earlier, we have 1,400 students at W&J. I maybe have 3 kids that pay full price. So I'm going to talk to you, and let me get my other presentation up. What you need to know about the financial aid process. This is what we're going to talk about tonight. What exactly is financial aid? What are some of the terms and definitions that you're going to come across during this whole process? What is financial need? How does the financial aid office create a financial aid package for you? What the application looks like, and any other special circumstances that come into play. So financial aid, it's basically any monetary source that's going to pay for college costs. And it is important to know that financial aid is not going to cover college costs 100% for most of you. I say that because there's just not enough funding from the federal and state governments and the institutions themselves. You will have a discounted price more than likely, but even those that have zero resources available to pay for college should not expect to go into a university and not have to pay anything. And you'd be surprised how many parents come in and think that this financial aid is going to cover everything, and it does not. So your cost of attendance is one component in creating your financial aid package. Your cost of attendance is derived of direct and indirect costs. Your direct costs are your actual billable costs, tuition, any fees, room and board. Indirect costs are costs that you are going to have money to pay for, but you're not actually going to get a bill from the college. You're going to have money to drive back and forth to home when the college is closed, or if you're commuting to drive back and forth. You're going to have money for books. You're going to have money for your personal supplies when you're on campus and things like that. Obviously, costs vary by institution, which we just saw. Another component that goes into creating your financial aid package is your expected family contribution. When you complete your financial aid application, you get a number. It's called your EFC. That number is what the federal government feels that you can afford for 1 year of college costs. That number is never what a family feels that they can afford for 1 year. I have to tell you, the first time I filled out a financial aid application, and I had been doing this for 10 years prior to filling it out for Trenton my first year, my EFC came back at like $30,000, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I did not have tuition benefits where I was for him, there's no way he would have been able to go, because we didn't have $30,000 just laying around for college costs. But no parent ever feels that they can afford what the EFC says. Another thing to keep in mind, when you get this expected family contribution, it's not a number that is what you're actually going to pay for that year. It's a number that the federal government uses to determine if you're eligible for some federal programs. The state uses it to determine if you're eligible for state grant programs, and the financial aid office uses it to create your financial need and to try to fill that need using financial aid programs. So I just talked about financial need. Your cost for that institution minus your expected family contribution gives us your financial need. Your cost will vary from school to school. Your expected family contribution number stays the same. That is what is derived from your Fafsa. That is what every school will receive that you indicate you want to send it to, and they will use that number to determine what your financial need is. So we try to fill that need using non-need-based grant money or scholarship money and need-based financial aid. So here are the types of financial aid that's available to students. You have scholarships, grants, which is gift aid because you do not have to repay those funds. And then there's self-help, which your student loans and your work study. So again, scholarships, gift aid does not have to be repaid, and it is awarded based on merit. So the better GPA you have, the better SAT scores you have, the more likely you are to receive some type of merit-based scholarship. It can also be awarded for athletics, for band, for any type of organization that you're in that they may have scholarships for at that institution. Grant money, again, does not have to be repaid, typically awarded based on your financial need. There is one type of federal grant program out there that is not based on your financial need, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Self-help aid, your loans. Everybody knows that a loan is something you borrow and you have to repay it. The typical student loans, you do not have to start repaying until after you graduate, and you have a 6-month grace period, and then you'll go into repayment. There are also loans available to parents, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I always encourage my students to use the money they have set aside for college expenses before they turn to the loan option. But the majority of our students at W&J do use their federal loans just because we are a pricey institution. Work study, this is a program. The federal government has a program, and some institutions will have also their own work study program. The student is awarded work based on their financial need. If they have financial need, we'll put them in the federal work study program. If they don't have financial need, but maybe have a special skill or they're just a need for student workers on that campus, they can put them in the non-work study type category, and the college just pays their wages. Now, every campus is different, but most campuses, the work study earnings go directly to the student in the form of a paycheck. It does not go to the bill. When you see your work study awarded to you on a financial aid award letter, it may look like they are subtracting that work study money from their costs, but that's only because they have to show it as a source of financial aid. But again, it typically goes to the student, so you have to keep that in mind when you're trying to figure out how much am I going to have to pay out of pocket or how much am I going to have to borrow to cover the actual bill. And then there are also RA positions on campus. This is a great opportunity for students to become a leader on campus and also get their room paid for. And there are some positions on campus that not only do they get their room paid for, but they could get some of their meal plan covered as well. So again, every campus is different in that aspect, but that is one thing to consider when looking at the costs. Most institutions will not allow a freshman to be an RA, but it's something to consider for sophomore years and forward. So where does all this financial aid come from? The federal government has programs. Pennsylvania has a program, one or two. The college and the university, so when you get your financial aid package, the biggest chunk, especially from a private school, of your financial aid award is going to come from the school itself. State institutions may have some scholarships available, but typically any aid you're getting from a state university is going to be federal or state grant money. Private sources, these are private scholarships that are out there. There's billions of dollars in scholarships available to students. Most institutions will provide links on their websites to find outside scholarships opportunities. Always talk with the guidance office here because they have information. Civic organizations and churches, a lot of people don't think about some of the organizations or the churches that they're affiliated with, and if they provide scholarships, a lot of them do, so look there. And then your employer, just check with your employer to see if they do have any type of tuition benefits for you or for your children. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the programs that are available through these various organizations. The federal government, the largest source of financial aid, but again, you're talking about $150 billion each year, but that's spread out over the whole country and all of the students that are filing financial aid applications. Their aid is awarded primarily based on your financial need, and whether you qualify is based on your Fafsa filing. And we'll talk about the Fafsa in a little bit. So right now I want to talk about some of the various financial aid programs. The federal Pell grant, and the information I'm giving you on dollar amounts is based on 14-15. The $15-16 amounts for these programs has not yet been set. They will be set probably January, February for the federal Pell Grant program, which is the first one we're going to talk about. The state grant programs are never set until May when the governor signs the Pennsylvania state budget. But for 14-15, to qualify for a federal Pell Grant, your expected family contribution from the filing of your FAFSA had to range between 0, meaning you have no resources available to pay for school, and $5,157. Your amount of Pell that correlates with that could range from $602 to $5,730. So even if you had a 0 EFC, the maximum amount you could get in a Pell Grant this year is $5,730. The Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant. This was a new program that the federal government started maybe 4 years ago, and it is for students who have lost a parent to military service in Iraq or Afghanistan. What the government does, they will make that student's EFC automatically 0. And then the student will receive an award equivalent to the maximum of the Pell Grant. The TEACH grant, this is a grant that's specific to students who want to become a teacher. There are a lot of requirements associated with this TEACH grant, and not every school participates. W&J does not participate in the TEACH grant program. Most of the state schools will participate. What the student has to adhere to is they have to work in a low economic school for 4 years within the first 8 years of their graduation. They have to teach in a certain field. An elementary teacher does not qualify. They have to be in a specific STEM, science, technology, math type of program, or a foreign language program. If they do not meet all of the qualifications or all the requirements, this grant converts to a loan, and it's an unsubsidized loan, so the student has to repay all of the money they've used, and it's $4,000 maximum. So if they've used $4,000 maximum for 4 years, that's $16,000, and if they end up not meeting the requirements, they have to pay back $16,000 plus all the interest that's accrued to that point. So that's one of the reasons why we don't use it at W&J, because I would feel like if the students know they have $4,000 available to them just because they're going to be a teacher, they're going to sign up and do it without even realizing they're going to have to pay it back if they don't meet those requirements. So if you are going to be a teacher or want to be a teacher, and your school does offer this program, I would just say to talk with the financial aid counselor, make sure you understand what the student has to do to keep it as a grant, so it does not convert to a loan. The SEOG grant is a supplement grant, and it basically is a pot of money that each institution is given from the federal government, and that institution can award that SEOG money how they see fit, but within some guidelines. So the student has to be receiving Pell. So it has to be, again, a needier student, has to be receiving Pell, and the SEOG, the maximum a student can get through that program, is $4,000 for the year. Because the allotment of funds for each campus is different for each school, how we award it is going to be different than how Waynesburg awards it or how Allegheny College awards it. So you may see an SEOG grant on a financial aid award from Waynesburg and not from W&J, or vice versa. At W&J, we only award $2,000 as the maximum so that we can spread it out to more students. All right, the Perkins loan program is kind of in flux right now. There has not been any money put into the Perkins loan program since the first George Bush was in office. They keep talking about getting rid of the program altogether and making the schools return money to the federal government from this program. But right now, it is still available. The only way it's available, however, is because we have been awarding Perkins over the years. So all of those people who were received Perkins and are now in repayment are sending that money back to the college to repay their loan. So that money we then use to then give to new students in the Perkins program. It's the best student loan program available. So if you are offered Perkins, take that loan before any other. It has a 5% fixed interest rate. You have a 10-year repayment term, and you have a 9-month grace period after you graduate. But again, it is based on your financial need, and most students probably will not be offered the Perkins loan. We talked a little bit about federal work study already. Typically, federal work study is minimum wage. You can get some higher wage rates based on special skills or based on the shift that you're working, but typically it is minimum wage, and every campus will award a different amount. Ours is around $2,000 a year because students can't work more than a certain number of hours a week based on their class schedule. So just keep that in mind. It's just a little bit of money that can help offset some of the expenses your student's going to have on campus. The Stafford Loan Program is the federal loan program that is available to all students as long as the student has never defaulted on any type of federal grant or loan program in the past, which yours have not. They are eligible to receive the Stafford loan. This loan is in the student name. They do not need you as a co-signer. They are responsible for repayment. Subsidized means the federal government is paying the interest on that loan. The interest rate for this academic year is around 6.8%. It is a fixed interest rate. Those rates reset every July 1st. So your interest rate for 15-16 will be a little different. There is a fee associated with each of the federal loans, not the Perkins, but the Stafford. The interest rate is 6.8, and then the fee is 1.02 or somewhere around there. The student pays that fee right off the top of the disbursement of the loan. So the net amount the student receives on campus is a little less than their maximum amount. The maximum amount they can get is $3,500. So $3,500 subsidized Stafford, maximum freshman amount. As a sophomore, that'll go up to $4,500. As a junior and senior, it goes up to $5,500. So still, when you're looking at a $50,000 college, a $5,500 Stafford loan, $3,500 sub, $2,000 unsub, which is the maximum a student could get in the unsub, doesn't really start to make a dent. The unsubsidized Stafford just means that you are responsible for the interest while the student is enrolled in school. The student does not have to pay the interest while they're in school, but they are accruing that interest until they go into repayment. So if you don't have to borrow all of your loans, take the Perkins first if you're offered it, then the subsidized Stafford, and then go to the unsubsidized Stafford. The last federal program that's available is the PLUS loan, and it actually stands for Parent Loan for Undergraduate Student. This is a loan that is in the parent name.
What's the amount again on the they do a subsidized and
Yes,
also?
they can do both. $3,500 would be subsidized maximum, and $2,000 is the maximum unsubsidized.
Is that per year or per semester?
That's per year. The PLUS loan can be applied for the amount that you need to cover college costs minus all your other financial aid. So you take the cost for that academic year, subtract out the aid that you're currently receiving. The difference you can borrow in a PLUS loan. It is in the parent name. Traditionally, the parent goes into repayment during the spring semester, the year that you use the loan. You have a 10-year repayment term on the PLUS loan. It's a fixed interest rate at 7.2%, and there is a 4.29% fee on this loan.
Why is the rate so high?
Good question, John. Why are the rates so high? Over the 13 years I've been there, the lowest I've seen them has been around 3%. They reset every July 1st based on the economy, based on Congress, but right now that's where they are.
Wow.
Yeah. That'll change July 1st.
I guess it's not going down.
We hope that it goes down. Well, I've seen it go down, then I've seen it go back up, so it fluctuates every year.
You're better off borrowing off the mob.
Yeah. So the FIA is the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency. They are the organization that administers the Pennsylvania State Grant Program. There are residency requirements. You have to live in Pennsylvania at least 1 year prior to your FAFSA filing. So if you file your FAFSA on January 1st, you had to have lived in Pennsylvania January 1st the prior year. FIA has some programs that are awarded based on your financial need, and they are starting a new program this year that's geared more toward the middle class that aren't qualifying for the state grant program, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. You have to apply, file your FAFSA by May 1st every year to be considered for the Pennsylvania State Grant Program. And I have so many kids that will miss that deadline and lose their state grants, even after I email them 15 million times to tell them to file your FAFSA, and they will lose out on $4,000. The minimum Pennsylvania State Grant is $500. The maximum is $4,010 for this academic year. It will vary from year to year based on the state budget. It'll vary from school because it is based on the school's costs. If you qualify for a state grant at W&J and qualify for the maximum, you'll get $4,010. If your costs are lower, like at Cal U, you may get a maximum of $2,500. So it'll vary. The new program that FIA has started this year is called the Ready to Succeed Scholarship. It is brand spanking new. We have not even seen a list yet of students that are going to be eligible for it for this year, and we're already in November of this year. But FIA will look at the students' income levels, the family's income. If the family's income is less than $110,000, they are going to send a list of those students to the school. The school will then look to see what their GPAs are. The GPA has to be a 3.25 or higher, and if they qualify, they'll get a $2,000 scholarship through FIA. This is not going to be for freshmen because they want the student to be there 1 year to get a GPA from that school. So it's going to be for sophomores and above. But if you qualify for the state grant, you're not going to get both. So it's going to be the higher of the two programs. If you qualify for a $500 state grant, which is the minimum state grant, but you also qualify for the RTSS, and it's a $2,000 program, you'll get a $500 state grant and you'll get a $1,500 RTSS to make it a total of $2,000. Colleges and universities have their own institutional money based on merit and based on need. Like I said earlier, the majority of your financial aid package is going to be comprised of the college funds, especially for a private university or college. When you file your FAFSA, all that information is sent to the school, and they will let you know what you qualify for. Through the admissions process, the scholarships are awarded. Once your admissions decision has been made and you've been accepted to the school, there's typically a committee that reviews all of your SAT scores, your GPA, your classes that you're taking, and they come up with a scholarship amount for that academic year. There are typically requirements for you to keep that scholarship from year to year. That could be a GPA. If it's an athletics award, it could be based on your involvement on the team, staying on the roster. So you want to make sure that you're checking what the requirements are to keep that money from year to year. The grant money that's given from colleges and universities are typically based on your financial needs. So you file your FAFSA every year. As long as your financial need stays relatively the same, then your grant money should stay the same. And that is a very good question when you're making a decision on where to send your child and you see your financial aid package in front of you. You do want to ask a few questions, and one would be, what happens in year 2? Do we see the same aid in year 2? Typically, costs rise every year. So you want to know, is my aid going to increase with your cost increases? And W&J's does not. Unless there's something dramatic that has happened in your financial situation from year to year, your aid remains the same once you come in. So that's a good question to ask. Private sources, like I said, foundations, businesses, charitable organizations, their deadlines are going to vary based on when they want to award it. Now is the time for the seniors to be applying for these outside scholarships. Again, civic organizations, research what is available from your community, from your church. Small scholarships add up. I know sometimes the students are tired of writing all those essays and putting them in for a $250 scholarship. $250 from them means you don't have to pay it and you don't have to borrow it. Employers, again, look to see if your employer has any type of benefits programs. And then here are some other payment options to just make you think of, how can I afford a college expense? How are we going to come up with that money? Tuition payment plans. We offer a 12-month interest-free tuition payment plan. So you can break down what you owe, what you fully owe for that year, or you can break down a portion of what you owe, pay it interest-free over the 12 months. Any income savings, any college savings plans you have, use those first before borrowing. Obviously, the sooner you borrow, the more interest that's going to be accruing over the four-year college career and then even into repayment. Military benefits. Do I have any servicemen in here? Okay, Denny. There are benefits available, so check to see what, if anything, you qualify for, because now military benefits can be gifted to your dependents. So check that, because there are some programs that will pay full tuition. Private loans. We typically say private loans should be your last resort. They are typically the most expensive loan product to use. However, they are now trying to become more competitive with the federal government, and they want to take your business away from the federal government. You may be able to find fixed interest rate loans now, where in the past they had all been variable interest rates, and you can find sometimes some better repayment terms. The federal government says 10 years. Unless you go into grad school and borrow again for grad school, you can get into a 15 to 20 year repayment with the federal government, but typically it's 10 years. With private loans, they can extend that out a little more too. One nice thing about the federal loan programs compared to the private, federal loan programs have a death benefit on whoever's borrowing the money. So if it's in the student name and 2 years out of college, the student still has $27,000 in debt, and unfortunately the student passes, nobody has to repay that money. It's forgiven by the federal government. Same with the federal plus loan. If the parent takes out the plus loan, and I've seen parents at W&J borrow over a 4-year period, $60,000, $70,000. If that parent dies, nobody else has to repay that loan. That's one nice benefit of a federal loan compared to a private. One thing to know, students cannot borrow on their own anymore. When I first started at W&J, banks were just lending out money, they just sign their name, give them the loan. When the mortgage bubble burst, that all stopped. They have to have a credit-worthy cosigner, and if the student doesn't make payment, they'll come after the cosigner for payment. Okay. We're going to talk now a little bit about the actual Fafsa application and what you need and how you complete the Fafsa. So before I get on to that, do I have any questions about any of the aid programs that we talked about? Okay. On January 13th, 2015, W&J is going to be hosting a Fafsa session where we are going to actually be going step by step through the Fafsa. You're not going to be able to complete your Fafsa there with us, but at least you'll get a more in-depth, I'm going to go quickly through the Fafsa, but you'll get a more in-depth, step-by-step of what questions are asked on the Fafsa. I will be sending information to the guidance counselors here so they can get it out. It's going to be January 13th. It's going to be at W&J. It'll be at 6:30 p.m., and I will get information to the guidance office so that they can get it to all the seniors. This is what a paper FAFSA looks like. We hardly ever get anybody to fill paper FAFSAs out anymore, because you can do it all online. This is called a FAFSA on the Web Worksheet. It's like 4 pages. These will be coming out to the guidance office for the 15-16 school year. This is a 14-15 because they don't have it updated yet for 15-16. This is a wonderful tool to use because you'll go through this and answer all the questions. Then you can go to the website and just enter the data, and it makes it a lot quicker. The FAFSA collects all of this data to give you your expected family contribution, which we now know all the schools use and the federal government uses and FIA uses to determine what you're eligible to receive. You can file it at any time before or during your academic year, but you want to be aware of the deadlines of your particular institution. For an incoming freshman, you have to pay your deposit to enter on May 1st or before May 1st. So it's called the National Candidates Reply Date. May 1st, you have to have your deposit into wherever you're attending. In order for most of us to know where we're attending, we need to know what our financial aid is. So in order for us to give you your financial aid package in a timely manner, we need you to file your FAFSA. So we at W&J say February 15th for freshmen. Now, the FAFSA is going to be looking at your 2014 tax data for the 2015-16 year. Most of us don't have our taxes filed by February 15th. What I tell you to do is to use a prior year tax return if your information is not drastically different, or to just do your best guessing on the tax questions. And then once you have your actual taxes filed, go back and update all of that information to make it accurate. Because your financial aid package is only going to be as accurate as the information you put on that FAFSA. So if it's wrong, your financial aid package may be off. This is the website, fafsa.gov. And like I said, the pre-application worksheet is going to help you immensely. Filing electronically gives you a lot of bonuses. There's help buttons that you can get help with a question if you don't really understand what they're asking for. Has skip logic. How many 18-year-old males do I have in the audience? Okay. Have you registered for Selective Service? Do you know what Selective Service is? A lot of them don't. Still today, a male that turns the age of 18 has to register with Selective Service, which was the draft. If you do not register for the Selective Service, you are not eligible for any federal aid. You have to do it. So you can do it online. SSS.gov is the website. It's real easy. Just enter your social security number, your date of birth, your name. They'll register you. But there's also a question on the FAFSA. If you're a male, are you registered? And if not, do you want us to register you for you? And we just mark yes on that, and it'll register you. But you have to register in order to be eligible for federal aid. On the website, if you are a female, it'll skip that question because it's already asked you if you're male or female. There's also an option to use the IRS data retrieval tool from the FAFSA. What this does is it'll ask you if your taxes are done. If they are, you have the option to link your tax data directly from the